So the film we're about to discuss has been, I've seen it on a lot of people's best of 2024 horror movie list. And some occasions I've seen it at the very top of their list, but it's usually between 1 and 7 on most people's lists that I've seen, unless they completely just, for whatever reason, just didn't like it. But it seems to be very popular. And the film that we are talking about, this is a new 4K release that it's a 2025 release of a 2024 film, and that is The Substance. This is put out by Mubi. Now, Mubi, if I've only got one other physical release from that company at this point, which is The Kingdom, and I also did a review on this, the Kingdom trilogy, which is a Danish miniseries, and it's quite awesome. And it's a very badass. That's a very badass release there. Now, this is a very impressive release for Mubi to have in their arsenal at this point, and I think it's probably going to bring some more attention to their brand. So, The Substance stars Demi Moore in a very, very impressive role for her, and it also has Dennis Quaid in it, and also Margaret Qualley. All three of them are terrific, and we're going to talk about their performances in this video. Now, and we're also during the course of this video, I'm going to talk about the story. I'm going to recap part of the story. I'm going to review the film and my thoughts on the themes of it, and we're going to take a look at this physical release. And I'm eventually going to rate the film on a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. And if you haven't done so already, if you go ahead and like this video and subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Now, The Substance is a body horror film at heart for the most part. Now, it does have other kind of type of themes that we're going to talk about, but on the surface of it, it is a body horror film. Body horror, David Cronenberg has been, most of his films are body horror films, like for instance The Fly, and also Videodrome are two very, very good examples of body horror by David Cronenberg. His son even recently, and a very well done one too, he put out this one called Possessor, kind of following in his dad's footsteps, but he kind of creates his own sort of film as well. It's very, very impressive film, and I enjoyed this one a lot. We can also link some body horror to David Lynch's Eraserhead. Now, David Lynch, who unfortunately recently died, rest in peace. I really think he was a terrific filmmaker, and I was very bummed to hear of his passing. But Eraserhead does have some body horror in it. Now, The Substance has some extreme body horror in it, and we're going to talk more about that here in just a bit. But it's high up there, I think, as far as just really putting on show the body horror. The practical special effects in this film are outstanding, and the special effects makeup. This also has a terrific production design on the wardrobe and the set. The set design is amazing, and this was directed by French director Coralie Fargeat. Now, Coralie Fargeat previously in 2017 directed another film called Revenge, and I guess it kind of seems like they have the same type of themes about how women are mistreated. And this one has about the entertainment industry, specifically about how women are mistreated. All the male characters in this film are like really almost caricatures in a way. Their performances are over exaggerated, and most of them are very like chauvinistic or sexist, and they're shown in a very poor light. And it's really from the point of view of two different women who were really the same person but at different ages, which we'll talk about when we get into the story. But it does kind of treat men in that way, and it's actually fairly hilarious, I think, the way that the men are established here. Now, this may be a way that I think a lot of women, especially women who are in these positions of model positions, men may actually really, that may be their perception of the way men come at them, and very overly exaggerated with their excitement of seeing them. The horror stuff here is very well done, and this really holds up really strongly with the best of the body horror out there if you enjoy that type of horror. Now, some people might not be able to stomach it. Now, the film does have a lot of really gross things in this. My friend, I was talking with him about it yesterday, Joshua Hare, he's asked me if I'd seen it yet. And he said, you better not, if you're going to watch the film, you better not eat and watch it at the same time because it is pretty gross. And I'm gonna go ahead and say the same thing. You may not be able to eat while watching this film. It's hard to take. But really, usually when I'm watching a horror film, I usually don't eat while I'm watching a horror film because you don't ever know what you're going to see on screen. Now, some people might not have a problem with eating and seeing something fairly disgusting in front of them while they're watching a movie, but usually I'll go ahead and eat first and then watch the film. So the film runs about 2 hours and 20 minutes, which I think for some it may seem like a little bit of an excessive length for a horror film. And I watched this at my house, not on the theater screen, obviously. So but I thought it played pretty good, and I held my attention for the duration of the running time. I think it spent the appropriate amount of time on each of the sequences in the film. Now let's get into the story of what happens. So let's get into the plot of this thing. So Demi Moore plays a character named Elizabeth Sparkle. Now Elizabeth Sparkle used to be like a well-known Hollywood star. As a matter of fact, she's got a Hollywood star on the Walk of Fame, and that's how the movie starts off. The movie actually starts off with this shot of an egg, and then it takes this syringe, which is the substance, and they inject the egg with the substance, and then the egg, it starts to kind of duplicate, and it becomes it shoots its syringe into the yolk of the egg, and then it kind of a part of the yolk, it duplicates, and now there's two of them, and that's kind of what the substance does, and it does this to a human body. So it starts off with, and then you see Elizabeth Sparkle's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and you see that kind of get damaged a little bit, but then you see her, and she is by the way, Demi Moore, I think she's 62 years old. And she looks terrific in this film. She's in really good shape. Even for somebody younger, she looks terrific. So she starts out and she's doing an exercise video. She's in front of the camera in the studio and she's doing this video. She's doing telling people how to exercise. She's got a group of other people around her that doing the exercise stuff, and she's doing a good job with her exercising. But Dennis Quaid plays a very unlikable character, as most of the male characters in this film are. But he's very he's the head of this studio, and he's the one that kind of makes all the decisions. And his performance is very broad, hilariously broad, and on purpose. I almost feel like the director told all the men, just go big with this. But he seems to be having a great time playing this character, and he does a terrific job. But at the same time, he is very unlikable. He's very nasty. There's a scene where he's talking with Demi Moore at a restaurant, and he's eating some kind of like lobster or fish thing. I mean, he's just like taking these pieces of it, shoving it in his mouth, and he's like talking with it in his mouth. He's a very kind of disgusting character, and on top of that, he's trying to push Demi Moore's character out because he's like, she's gotten too old to be doing these things. We need somebody younger, somebody that's going to be more appealing to people who want to watch workout videos or whatever. But she does find out that he's trying to push him out. He doesn't come right out to her face and be, I'm going to fire your ass, but she goes into the bathroom. She ends up having to go into the men's bathroom because the women was being cleaned or something, and then she's in the stall, and he comes in and he's like, reveals that he wants to fire. He's talking to somebody on the phone and reveals that he wants her out. So she's very depressed about that. So Demi Moore's character, Elizabeth Sparkle, is just having a really bad day. She's driving down the street and she sees a billboard of herself and somebody's taking it down. And this distracts her and she accidentally wrecks her car. Now she ends up in the hospital, and the very young looking doctor, one of the few male characters in this film that's not overtly exaggerated, he gives her like a little kind of flash drive that says the substance on it. And he's like, you need to check this out or whatnot. Later on, she checks it out, and it tells a story about how you basically, once you inject this substance into you, you basically become two different entities. It separates you, but it's still you. Now, so she does what she should have done, and she takes the drive and throws it in the trash. And she should have left it in the trash. But then later on, some other bad stuff happens to her, and she decides to take it back out and follow up on it. She calls the number. The guy gives her an address. The way that they do it on the phone is just very short. He gives you your address. He's like, you need to write this down. Says the address. Click. Hangs up. And now, if that was me, and I was on the phone, and somebody told me an address, and they hung up, I would not remember it. But she remembers it. But she writes it down. And when she goes there, it's like kind of this alley, and it's like a really odd looking door. She hits it to open, and it only comes up part way, and she has to crawl under it and go in. She goes into this room, and it's like this very white room with some lockers. There's like 20 lockers in the room that are all together, and there's only 2 of them have numbers on it. I think one's 207 and hers is 503. And so she opens up the 503 and she takes what's the substance out of it. And so she goes back and injects it into her, and there's a bunch of other like little packets in there. Like you get this is a bit of a process. One's an injection, which does the first transformation. Then after that, you have the second pack is like I think 7 days of food, and there's 7 days of food for like for one, and then the others like 7 more days of food, and then there's some other special equipment stuff in there. So she decides to inject it with the syringe. Now that's something else about this. People who are, which I don't like needles. Sometimes I had to look away, to tell you the truth, especially for the needle stuff. There's a lot of needles going into the skin here. Obviously, it's fake, because it's very amazing practical special effects, by the way. So she injects herself, and then there's some crazy body stuff, and she falls on the floor in pain, and then her back rips open, and some like other legs you start seeing some starting to come out. Then it cuts away to some other stuff that doesn't show the hole crawling out of her body, but then it comes back to, and something else I guess I didn't mention. It's pretty cool. Demi Moore comes into the bathroom and she takes all of her clothes off. She's completely nude, and you see everything very well. And she looks terrific. So the other one crawls out of her, and then Margaret Qualley plays her younger self, or the alternate version that she calls herself Sue. And she comes out, and again, completely nude, and she looks fantastic, completely nude. And she, and you see all of her parts. The same with Demi Moore's character. But then this character comes out, and then she begins. She's her. It was weird. This is almost like a Jekyll and Hyde film too, in a way. I think it borrows heavily from Jekyll and Hyde, because she knows, but it's more like, but she still knows that the other self's unconscious, or the other body isn't working while she's the Sue character. But she has to take care of the other body. And so, which she does, and then so she has to give it the food. So then the Sue character goes to the studio, and she gets a audition, and she does an amazing job. And Dennis Quaid's character pops in. He's so excited. He's like, they've been looking for somebody like her. They've been looking for somebody to replace the other character, Elizabeth Sparkle, played by Demi Moore. But now he's like, this is a perfect replacement. And so he hires her on the spot, and she tells him that she could. The thing is, like, she can only do 7 days at a time, because the other 7 days she has to be Demi Moore's version of the character. But the thing is, she has to do it. Once it gets into the 7 days, she starts bleeding out of the nose and having a lot of problems. And so she has to bring the other one back. And later on, like when she actually goes past a certain amount of time and tries to inject another day into her body, Demi Moore's character begins to have problems. The first thing that happens, her finger gets all old and witch crony like, but every time she doesn't come back at the right amount of time, the Sue character, then Demi Moore's character becomes more and more messed up, like physically. And so it really, like from the get-go, the best thing to have done when this situation is just not get involved. And I had a lot of questions about what would happen if certain things happen. Now, a lot of them were answered during the film. Now, one thing was like, what if, say, for instance, like the Sue character, even the other character, like ended up, something happened to them, like where they couldn't get back to the body, like they're out and maybe they have another car wreck like she did earlier in the film, or for whatever reason, maybe she gets arrested, or something happens to her where she's detained and can't get back to the body. Now, some of that kind of isn't answered, but we kind of can guess what would happen. But there's a lot of other questions about what could happen in certain instances that are revealed throughout the film. Now, one question that's not really answered, and I think it's good that you don't have to answer all questions about things, but we don't quite understand or know where the company that gives them the substance to begin with, we don't know what their true motivations are, because they don't ask for money. Now it would be interesting if they were having to pay for it, but it does seem to me to be maybe an experiment. There's not explained. It could be like an alien technology that maybe the aliens are trying to do this, but for them to do this experiment on such a high-profile person, in both instances, a person who appears on television and gets really like, when she's the younger version of Sue, she gets a really high profile gigs. So it's very risky if that was if they're just doing it as an experiment. But we don't know what their true motivations are for the people who are doing the substance. That are they? I mean, the only thing I could think of is, because they're not asking for money. It is either like it is an experiment, and they want to see, they got to see some test results, or maybe they have more of a sinister plan that isn't revealed during the course of the film. Now, as far as the other locker, Locker 207, we do find out whose that locker is. Now, apparently, looking at this film, you only see two people who are actively involved with this substance. So you do find out who that is. I'm not going to say who it is, but it's not that big of a deal in the film. It works okay. But I mean, right now you only have two people doing it. Now, as far as the set design here is and just the, I guess the art direction here is fantastic. Like, now a lot of it takes place, especially earlier on, in the bathroom at Demi Moore's character's house when she's in there taking the substance, and it's mostly white, a little bit of black accents in there, very white, and it looks just the contrast to that, and the substance is green, so it makes everything kind of stand out. That's a different color in that. And as far as the wardrobe, say for Demi Moore's character, does like wear like a yellow coat, which stands out a lot sometimes when they're outside. A lot of times it's in LA, and then some of it looks very vivid, very bright with the colors. A lot of times it's a very interesting design throughout, and they do some weird stuff with some of the shots, especially like sometimes they'll have like a weird shot of a person, whether it be Dennis Quaid or someone else talking to her. It's just a very off-putting type of shot, almost right down the barrel of the camera, but not quite. It's just almost like it's kind of crossed the line slightly, just to kind of give it like a weird look. You know, it's almost like they're kind of positioned like this in a scene. Well, maybe something like this, but maybe closer. But it's odd, very odd looking shots occasionally, and it's a little disorienting, really, when you're watching it, and some of the scenes. But it has a very interesting way of editing some of these things, especially with the sound design, and it kind of, but it just flows very, very nice. But it does get a little redundant kind of when you're switching back and forth from Sue to Elizabeth Sparkle. Like, sometimes it kind of becomes a little painful to watch some of the body horror that happens to Elizabeth Sparkle, like the more that Sue doesn't follow directions. And that's something else this film has something about it. It's something that's this is a film that's like a cautionary tale as well for people who do not follow directions. Like, if you think about it, a lot of times a product has been tested, and there's a certain reason why they tell you not to do things or to do things, but in the same time, they don't give them pretty good instructions on it. They just say, this is how you do it. Don't do this, don't do that. But they don't say what's the consequence. But really, like, Sue finds out what the consequence is pretty early, but she like keeps doing it anyway because she becomes it's also an allegory for addiction as well, like addiction of especially beauty addiction, or just that, you know, she has to have this interaction of this beauty and this younger self, and all the attention that she gets, the right amount of attention. But when she goes back to Elizabeth Sparkle, she's just becoming like more and more disfigured and ugly, and has to be like, just like she has to like hide in her apartment. But yeah, it's an allegory about addiction, and maybe even drug addiction as well. It also is a satire of the entertainment industry, and it works very well on all those levels. And it also works very well on a horror level as well. And by the end of the film, there's literally like a blood bath, or more like a blood shower. But it gets fairly extreme in an awesome way. And again, the prosthetics here are phenomenal, and as are the performances by Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley. They're both really amazing performances. It's pretty awesome to have actors like Dennis Quaid and Demi Moore in films like this, people who have won major awards, and now they are older at this point, but they still like it's like these actors who are kind of well-known actors in a true horror film. This isn't like some like psychological thriller. This is a true bloody, grotesque horror film. Let's take a look at this release. It's upside down, so you got this. I got a slip cover, the same on the inside that's on the outside. So there's a white. It's just white on the inside. We got two discs. We got a Blu-ray and we got a 4K disc. Demi Moore's on one, Margaret Qualley's on the other. Without any further ado, let's go ahead and rate this video on a scale from 1 to 5. 1 being the lowest, to 5 being the highest. My rating for this movie is a 4. I really enjoyed the film. And I think on future watch, it may not, maybe one that's harder to watch again because of how like kind of gross some of the stuff is that happens on screen, but it's very well done for what it is. And also here, this 4K transfer from Mubi, this is an amazing transfer. The blacks are very deep. You see a lot of texture on the skin. Now, I didn't look at the Blu-ray, but I'm sure it's going to be, it's just, they're both probably from the same transfer, but the 4K is going to be more detail in general. If you haven't done so already, if you would just go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching.